Good morning, everyone, and welcome to West London Business's first webcast, Talk at 10, which brings our community of experts, members of West London Business, and the wider business community together in the extraordinary times that we're living through. A message just in the past few hours has come in to our office from the Queen's Deputy Lieutenants, expressing their strong support and thanks to the entire business community for continuing to make every effort to drive our economy forward in these difficult times. And also, I think from all of us, we'd like at this point to extend our support to the emergency services and key workers that are working all hours in response to the unfolding crisis. In the wider context, of course, of West London, you may well have seen the news that indeed the leadership that's been demonstrated by John Holland-Kaye, Chief Executive at Heathrow Airport, who just 2 days ago announced that he was putting his pay on pause for months ahead as the airport and its supply chain navigates the challenges that they're faced with. And it's those sorts of actions that I'm looking forward to exploring in the hour ahead with our panel. Now, it won't have escaped your notice, I hope, as keen supporters, members of West London Business, that over the past few weeks, we've been making every effort to share through our website online support, which can be accessed at the web address that I think is just about to come up on screen, tinyurl.com/WL coronavirus. And there you'll see a whole range of support that the team has been bringing together that is particularly business facing, covering issues that we'll explore today, but also some of the more technical challenges that business leaders are grappling with at this time. But we have three themes that I'm going to be exploring in the next hour with our expert panel. We're going to be looking at the current duties faced by employers that need to remain front of mind as we make challenging decisions in the days ahead. We're going to explore restructuring, which I know from phone calls with many business leaders in recent days, unfortunately, is having to be considered in some firms. I think there's a reality that whilst government support is starting to fall into place, and in next week's webcast, we'll be exploring that government support in much more detail. It is going to take time for that support to trickle through. And for that reason, some businesses that may be very marginal, may be struggling for cash, or indeed may be faced with no customers in the hospitality sector in the months ahead, are clearly acting to downsize, and that have been, we've seen in the past few days. And then our third theme for this morning will be adapting your business and the opportunities to think out of the box and think differently. Now, to address these themes, I'm incredibly fortunate to be joined by an expert panel. We have John Rose from HR department. We have Louise Ray Hill from Jocelyn Hill Communications. We have Julie Edmonds from JPC Law, we hope, on the line. Julie's connection has been playing up a little bit, so we're not sure whether we're going to be able to bring her into the conversation or not. And then for a kind of frontline business perspective, we're going to be turning, we hope, to Ian Hobson from Chargebox, and also to Catherine Glass, who is the director of White Label, but also sits on the LEAP, the kind of enterprise board for London. And supporting me from the West London Business team, we have Pim, who is going to be tracking your questions, which I hope will start to trickle in over the next 5 or 10 minutes on the live feed, the sort of chat space in YouTube. So Pim is tracking those comments, and we'll be bringing Pim in a little bit later on to share some of your thoughts and questions. So a very warm welcome to our panel as we move into the first part of this morning's discussion, looking at the current duties of employers, those questions of what to do with regards to staff illness at this time, the optionality or not of going to work, childcare, and then also some of the legal obligations of employers when making those decisions. Right, I'm going to turn first of all to John at the HR department to share, I suppose, for you, what is top of mind as you look at this landscape and reflect on some of these key questions, which I'm sure many of your clients have been bringing to you in the past few days. We seem to be struggling a bit with our live link to John there. So I think instead I'm going to turn across to Catherine for some of your reflections on how you've been grappling with these challenges in the past few days.
Well, grappling's probably a really good word. It's clearly uncharted territory, and for a small business, we are literally hourly having to think about how we react and how we deal with all of the staff issues. We are a small business, so we have been using the HR department in our neck of the woods to give us some advice, which has been helpful. But because it is changing literally hourly, what we're doing is having to change hourly. We started sort of trying to put some actions in place, what we thought was with plenty of time, probably as early as last Friday or even last Thursday, we started to have some early conversations. I don't think any of us thought that, less than a week on, we would be where we're at. So we've had to very quickly move from some initial thoughts and conversations about how we ensure the business's survival, what that means to our staff. And we've had to move really, really quickly, and at the same time still try and keep everything going as positively as possible. So it is really, really difficult. I'm not an HR expert, but I've been really grateful for the support that is out there from a number of people that can give that support. And we are having ongoing conversations with our team and are having to make some really difficult decisions about what we do with our team. What I would say is that they've been absolutely amazing and fantastic, which I wouldn't have expected anything less of them. But we are all in this together, and I think everyone does really appreciate that we are all trying to do the best that we can to keep everybody comfortable and happy, and most importantly, safe and well.
Thank you, Catherine. And of course, through these very fast-paced changes in any organisation, communications is critical. So I think I'm going to turn to Louise for your thoughts on the communications challenge internally to employees.
I think that there is, as Catherine said, absolutely unprecedented times, and I don't think anyone was quite ready for how quickly things were going to change. But one of the things that we're working with a lot of clients at the moment is the different elements of communication. So obviously the internal bit in terms of what you say to your employees and what's allowed and how you're covering different aspects of everything that they need is a huge part of it. It's not the only part. Obviously how you communicate to your external audiences, your clients, your customers, whoever that may be, it all needs to be aligned. So what you need is a strategy to make sure that you're saying the same thing to everybody, and that is very difficult in these times where things are changing so quickly. And I think so consistency is absolutely key. And the other thing that's absolutely key is to be as sort of approachable and as communicative as you can. There's often a temptation to shut down, or if you don't know the answer, to say nothing, because you're still trying to work out where you're going. And that is, unfortunately, that's the most difficult thing for employees to deal with. They'd much rather have some kind of guidance, know who to contact, and just even if sort of saying we don't know but we're working on it is a much better solution than to just not do anything until you sort of got a definite answer, because there are no definite answers at the moment. It's still moving, minute by minute almost. So it's very difficult. But the main thing is to address it, I think, and everyone's doing that, right from the government all the way down. I think people generally are being very positive about it in the way that they can. It could go much more negatively. The main thing is to just keep the communication channels open.
Thank you, Louise. Now, that certainly echoes what we've been trying to do in our own team at West London Business, in staying in regular contact, making use of tools like WhatsApp to stay in touch across the team as the situation changes, as you say, almost by the hour. But also we've moved our regular team meetings across to Microsoft Teams, which we found has worked remarkably well. This evening we're having a team social on Microsoft Teams, so anything is possible. Now I'm hoping that John's connection has re-established itself, and we can bring him in for his thoughts from an HR director's perspective.
Yeah, hi guys. Hopefully you can hear me. So yeah, it's difficult times, and I think there's a difference here between what is normal and black and white as far as the employment situation is concerned, but also now trying to be practical and also sensitive to where employees are. The questions that we get quite a lot is, how does SSP work, and who gets it, and who doesn't get it? So I thought it might just be useful, and just to get really down to the nuts and bolts, just to through quickly who would get SSP and who wouldn't. So SSP is payable for those. Sorry, Andrew.
Great, John, and I think we're going to bring a slide up on screen that just summarises the SSP obligations.
While that's happening, oh yeah, I can see it now. SSP is payable for those employees that have got the symptoms of temperature, and also that new continuous cough that the two things that we hear from Boris quite a lot. Also, if an employee has a person in their household with those symptoms, SSP is payable for those people. It's also obviously payable for people that have got coronavirus, and those employees that are also self-isolating in line with medical advice. So if they've got conditions and they've received medical advice to self-isolate, then SSP is payable. The confusion comes around, I think, the examples that have been given by various government spokesmen on those precautionary measures for high risk. As it stands at the moment, those high risk groups aren't technically covered for SSP. SSP is payable for a 14-day period for coronavirus. So I think people need to think about how employers need to think about how they move ahead and deal with their employees, both from a practical point of view, but also following the legislation as it's going to be laid out.
Thank you, John. And the slide that you'll see that we are navigating our virtual studio for the first time today, and the slide that accidentally went up on screen that I think we're going to bring back now, which was the question that many employees will be asking of, I can't work from home, there's no space, the kids get in the way, can my employer make me work from home? How do you think employers should go about addressing that challenge, John?
That's it's a very good question, and there are a lot of grey areas around this. So an employee has got a contractual obligation to go into their normal place of work. If they can do work from home, then the government advice make every effort to enable that. But there'll be people that find it difficult, and the people doing it for the first time as well. I think one of the things that Louise said earlier on was make sure you've got regular communication with your employees, and when you do that, you can identify what their concerns are, how they're actually being able to manage the kids at home, and just be flexible and sympathetic about it. If an employee refuses to come into work, then they are technically on authorized absence, and technically you could go down a disciplinary process. Clearly, that's probably not what you want to do now, but it's really about talking to employees, bringing them with you in what you're trying to achieve, and trying to find the practical help that you can give them.
And this is, of course, a situation that keeps changing by the hour. And we were reading just this morning that there is a potential for London going into further lockdown over the next 24 hours, which will clearly change the dynamics yet again between employees and employers. Now, I think we're going to bring one more slide up on screen, which is just we wanted to flag an interesting new service option that has come from one of our members for remote GP access, because clearly access to the NHS is particularly under strain at the moment. So those that already have insurance with WPA, health insurance for their staff, can understand bolt this on at the point of renewal. But if you're looking for a new package for your staff, then this is an option to look at. We also, of course, in our membership have the VDoc service, which provides a similar sort of solution. But I think the comfort of being able to call a doctor may be welcomed by many at this time. So thank you for those reflections on I suppose the sort of workplace sort of context sort of challenge. But I'm going to turn now to the theme of restructuring, which sadly I know from conversations with a number of our members in recent days is having to be considered, because cash in many businesses is a very real challenge. So I'm going to be keen to get reflections from the panel around what alternatives might be considered. I'm hoping that we may now have a link to Julie. We'll have a go at bringing Julie in one more time to talk about variations to contract, the legal requirements of downsizing, how to do it compassionately, and then also options around closing or perhaps pausing your business during the crisis. But before I try and bring in Julia, I'm going to bring in another slide from an organisation that we work very closely with, the West London Business, the Conduit, which is, I suppose, the reality for many of our hospitality businesses at the moment, that they are having to put their businesses on pause. They're having to make staff redundant. And in the case of the Conduit, their approach has been to, alongside that, launch a staff welfare fund, which I thought was good food for thought for anyone else that is facing such a grim choice. But we'll turn now, I hope, to Julie at JPC Law to get your thoughts on some of these legal aspects. link, but no audio, unfortunately, for Julie. So I think we'll. We can hear Julie. We can hear Julie. So we'll turn back to you. No, the link. We could hear you briefly. Do you want to keep going? Keep going.
We know that this is a really difficult time. Some waters, nobody really has a situation. Andrew, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, you're loud and clear. So just keep on going with your reflections on the restructuring
the workplace, and that's going to be difficult for you to think about what to do.
No.
So in terms of the temporary closure of the workplace, that's a tough decision for any employer to make. But I think, as Andrew said, what we really need to think about at this time is dealing with things sensitively and communicating with your staff really clearly. So in terms of if the decision has to close temporarily, then unfortunately, if there's nothing in your contract about you not to pay your staff, then you're going to be entitled to full pay. So that's not necessarily going to be a solution for businesses at the moment that are really suffering with obviously workflow and what the future brings. So in terms of options, there's lots of things to think about. You consult with your staff. Can you have a conversation and ask them to temporarily reduce their pay? To be something that's welcomed, but if it's an alternative to redundancy and losing someone's job, then it might be something that they'd be prepared to consider. The other thing to think about is, can you agree with people? It's not going to reflect a cost saving for you as a business. The force is still engaged and is still there when you're ready to pick things up, hopefully in the next few weeks, hopefully not longer. The other options you think about, ask volunteers for some people might, because of their personal circumstance, to think about that for you. And think about sources in your business. You've got agency workers or contractors that won't for you. If you their contract, it's not going to have the same potential impact for you or risk vision as a business.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to cut across now to Pim for a question that I think has come in from Sarah Adcock. Pim, I wonder whether you can share Sarah's question that's just come in on YouTube.
Yes, sure. So Sarah's asked two questions. The first one is, do we have to treat all staff on the same basis, or can we reduce some working hours and not others? On hold for a few weeks while we see what needs to be done to help businesses work through this period.
Julie, what are your thoughts there? We seem to have lost Julie again, so I'm going to bring John in instead to pick up on those questions from Sarah.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So around the question on can you treat staff differently? Yes, you can. Different people are doing different jobs. So if you've got one department that is doing one particular activity and another one doing something different, then yes, you can treat them differently. It's a matter of sitting down with them and working out what is actually good for the business going forward. And the second question around can you put everything on hold for a few weeks? Unless you've got, you were saying earlier, unless you've got something expressly stated in your contract around layoff, then you need to get an agreement from the employees in order to put things on hold. You know, the question is, redundancy is almost the nuclear option. That ends work, that ends the job, and that is almost the end game. If you think about the other aspects that you can do, such as unpaid leave, such as layoff requirements, provided that you get consent from your employees to do that, then that is a way of trying to just keep things on hold until we know how things are going to move, particularly how the government is going to fund some of the things that they're saying they're going to fund.
Thank you, John. Now that's certainly the idea that I think Julie shared a little bit earlier regarding trying to bring forward holiday is something that we're picking up on a number of employers considering at this time. The obvious advantage being that you'll then potentially have additional capacity in your team as you put your foot back down on the gas a bit later in the year. Now I'm going to turn to Ian from Chargebox, who has, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, decades of experience across industry. And has seen a whole host of cycles of change, but also challenges over the years. For his reflections on this sort of internal change challenge, Ian. Ian, I'm going to cut you short there because I think we lost you. I think our studio lost you for a moment. Yes, full of surprises today. And I'm just going to bring in now Louise for her reflections on the sort of communications aspects of managing change and potentially having to deliver some quite tough news to one's workforce.
Sure. I mean, I think redundancy is really, really tough from a communications point of view. There's just no nice way to deliver what is ultimately a terrible message. But I think the most compassionate way to do it is to really put the people that are affected first and to make sure that you are speaking to them first and not allowing any kind of rumours or gossiping to happen around the office. It's very difficult to manage, especially if it's only impacting certain areas. But quite often we see when you're managing a redundancy process from a comms point of view that what causes the most unrest is the sort of period of uncertainty for people where there's speculation growing and people gossiping with each other in terms of what's happening. You know, some people having more information than others. So the most compassionate thing to do is to just speak to the people as soon as possible that are affected and make sure that you're letting everybody know what's going on. Because ultimately, if you're delivering a horrible message, no one likes it, but everybody at least feels respected if they are told what's going on and they're not just left to kind of figure it out for themselves. I mean, I've worked in some organisations where they've delivered the news by a letter, which is, you know, just not, it's not, no one wants to have the conversation, so it's not easy for the people delivering it either, but you have to think of the people that are impacted and just make sure that, you know, you've done everything that you can to reassure them, and quite often there's a lot of resources and tools and support that can be offered to the people that are affected. You need to manage the other people in the organisation that are, you know, not that it's going to massively affect team morale, it's going to have a very negative sort of atmosphere in the office. All of those things need to be taken into consideration. The main way to manage it is to have a very clear plan and strategy upfront, and then to roll that out very quickly, so you manage any kind of leaking of the message before. You don't want to lose control of that. You need to control it as much as possible, at the same time as being as open and honest as you can be with the people impacted. It also depends massively on the size of the organisation. If you work at a very large organisation, there'll be a whole process around the redundancy. When it's a smaller company or organisation, much harder. It's much more personal. You tend to know the people more, so it depends. It's not great, and I think that sometimes even just the managers owning that and saying to people, you know, this is awful, and we're going to do everything we can to make the process as bearable as possible. Honesty and openness in the communication forum is usually the best way to go with something that is ultimately not very nice.
Thank you, Louise. No, I think certainly we double underline that you know, not using a letter as the first means of communicating such challenges. But of course, it's been reflected back to me in recent days, the growing difficulties of having face-to-face meetings with staff that may be impacted. And so we're certainly picking up on a lot of employers trying to make sure that these difficult conversations happen by video as an alternative in these times. Now, I'm going to take us to our third sort of line of inquiry for this morning, adapting your business. I mean, I think, you know, the conversation so far has been rather gloomy, but I've certainly been seeing and been heartened to see in recent days the entrepreneurial spirit of our West London community shining through, as many businesses move quite quickly to take up new opportunities. And I did have a chuckle when I saw the news that Brewdog have launched a new product. I think it's going to come up on screen now. The Brew Gel Punk Sanitizer, which I think is inspiration to us all as to what's possible in these times. So I wonder, first of all, Ian, whether you could tell us a little bit about that sort of adaptation process, because clearly your business, a West London Business Award winner, no less, has faced some real challenges in the past few weeks. Sure. I'm going to interrupt you briefly, Ian, just to ask the studio to bring you back in again, Ian, because I think the link was lost. So I'm hoping that we will cut across to you in just a moment or two. Okay, let's see whether the studio can bring Ian in now. Whilst we're waiting for the studio team to catch up with us and hopefully bring Ian very soon, I just wanted to give you a taste of what is coming up in the week ahead. We will be having another talk at 10 this time next week, Thursday. That's going to focus on finance and accessing government support. And we are really keen to get your feedback and ideas as to the key topics that we need to be exploring, new resources that we can be developing with our partners to get to your inboxes in the days ahead. But our hope is that by next Thursday, some of the government schemes that have been announced in the past few days will have clarified themselves in terms of how they'll be delivered and how they can be accessed by businesses. And we'll be exploring that sort of detail with our panel next week. But as I think the studio is now sort of live again, I'm hoping that we can bring Ian back in to tell his story of change in his business. Let's see whether we can cut across to him successfully. If not, I think we're going to hear from Catherine at White Label about some of the changes that they're making. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, hello. Yes, so it's been really interesting hearing everyone's thoughts and hearing what everyone is doing. We've been doing very similar things, a real mix of those communications with the team. We've employed over the years a variety of full-time, part-time freelancers, and we've had a variety of conversations with all of those in the recent days. And sadly, we've also had to have some redundancy conversations because our priority has been to work out what we need to do to ensure that we are a business that can survive the current storm and come out the other end. And that is the starting point of our conversations to ensure that we have a business that can hopefully weather the storm. In terms of how we're adapting and changing our business, I think that's very much work in progress. We're currently in a sort of a business continuity stage, I'd call it, which is to look after our staff, to ensure that the people we employ actually know where they stand and how we want to work with them remotely in the coming few weeks, as well as talking to our existing customers to make sure that they're aware of that we're still here and that we still have a service that we can offer them, albeit remotely. And in some areas, I'm sure, as the same with Louise, communications is going to be an even greater importance and necessity for businesses. So offering them the fact that they do still need to communicate. What we're finding and realizing sensitively right at this moment is that that's not the top of anyone's priority. At the moment, everyone is trying to work out how they're going to keep their businesses going, and as Ian and others have been saying, testing out the remote working possibility. In the background, we're talking about how we can adapt the business to ensure that some of the services that we offer, some innovations that we're coming up with, can be possibly used. But we're very sensitive to the fact that we are all in the same boat, and people don't have a lot of money, or in fact probably no money. So anything that we can offer probably has to be done on a sort of almost a cost neutral, even free basis, to ensure that we are going to hope to continue to employ our staff. And one of the things we need to do is give them some work to do, because it is as sort of demotivating to be sat at home on your own, missing your team and the team environment, and then to actually find that you've physically got nothing that you can deliver. It is also could be very demotivating and distressing for people. So actually coming up with solutions that may not earn us money, but can keep us engaged with our clients, with our stakeholders, and as I say, most importantly, keeping our team involved and engaged is really important as well. And I think an important consideration.
Thank you, Catherine. Now, we've also noted in recent days the additional stress that is being put on the voluntary sector that support many of the most vulnerable in our West London community, and it struck us that there could be opportunities there too for folk that don't have quite so much to do in the workplace at the moment, to get out and help those organisations on the ground where that's allowed and possible, or perhaps through some remote support. I'm going to turn now to Pim for some of the latest questions that have been coming in. There's one that's just caught my eye from AVB. I don't know quite who AVB is, but it's an interesting question that I'm hoping that John will be able to answer.
Yes, sure. So AVB is asking, do we need to pay expenses to employees who are working from home?
John.
Yes. The answer to that is no. What you may want to do, let me try and explain that. If people are not commuting into work, then they're saving some money there. Their employees to use their facilities at home in this situation. So the answer to that is, the answer to the question is no. What you may need to think about is, are there any adjustments that need to be done in the home environment from a health and safety perspective, or from printing or that kind of thing? You may want to consider making some payments for that, but there's no mandatory reason to do that.
Thank you, thank you, John. I suppose to some extent there'll also be an element of a case-by-case basis to the approach to expenses, and individual companies having to work through what feels appropriate in the circumstances. Now I think we've reconnected with Ian, who I'm really looking forward to hearing his reflections on how he's reorienting his business at this time. Ian.
Hello. Looks a little bit better this time. We're trying to adapt, and so obviously the way we work. I don't know how much you got last time that we did a little bit of manufacturing from home yesterday, which is a new thing for us. But it's also looking at how we use our fleet of charge boxes to do things that we hadn't expected. So because we don't have an events business right now, we have about 30 or 40 stations of ours that are unused. Can we deploy these in hospitals to help out at the moment, for instance? So this is an area we're looking at. Obviously, it's not a high priority in terms of hospitals have got a lot of other things to think about, but if we can make it very easy for them, would that be of benefit? So we're exploring that and see if we could just plug a few holes. But the challenge will be really how quickly things get back going again for us, and that's an unknown. Even if everybody's let out their house again and back to work, will we be able to? Will sales just return to normal? We don't know, I guess. So that's the big challenge still. How long it's going to go on for? How long do we have to plan for?
Indeed, and it's a question that we ask ourselves almost every day here at West London Business too. We some might say optimistically hope that there might be some return to normality in June time. We're hoping that we might be able to transition our events from online to more in-person activities at that point. Particularly, we'd hope by the start of July. But that it has to be noted that there are experts advising that the challenges could extend for some time longer. Now, I think we've got some more questions coming in, so we're going to turn back to Pim for maybe a question that has come, I think, from Sarah Adcock in the past few minutes. A question that I'm hoping that Louise can pick up on. So Pim, what's Sarah been asking?
Sarah's asking, do you think it would be best to address this team online or individually? Obviously, it would usually be one-to-one, but given some things need group consent, i.e. pausing business, then it might be better to do this as a group.
So thank you for that. I think it kind of depends what the message is that you're going to do it, and also how big the group is. I think the difficulty with group communications is that people don't tend to feel that they can either raise questions that, they're embarrassed to raise questions in front of other people, or they feel pressured into whatever the general consensus of the group is, and generally people don't tend to speak up. So it depends what message you're trying to communicate and whether or not, because obviously some sort of things like town halls and those sorts of group comms is much more one way. If it's something that you would have done one-to-one, that's because you want it to be more of a two-way communication. So I would say it depends what the communication is. But if it's something where you actually want a realistic response and to actually find out what your staff are thinking, that needs to be done to one. And you know, ideally, as we were saying before, video is, if you can't do it face to face, video is the next best thing. If video is too complicated because they don't have the bandwidth or the connections, then you know, obviously do that via phone. Don't do it on email, would be my thought.
Thank you, Louise. Now I'm going to try just one last time on this webcast to bring in Julie from JPC Law, in case she has any reflections on our conversation this morning and key points from a legal perspective that she'd like to share. Julie. No, I think this is
yes,
this is highlighting
Andrew,
for all of us.
In terms of communication, I agree with all the comments made. I think yes. Can you hear me now?
Please keep on going.
Hello, good morning.
I think we're going to have to give up on the link to Julie there. But we hope to, as I said, hear more from Julie from a more robust connection in the days and weeks ahead. So instead, I'm going to turn for some final reflections to Catherine. And it'd be good to hear your thoughts as you look out sort of across the city at this time, wearing your sort of LEAP hat, sitting on the board of the sort of London Enterprise Partnership. I suppose the challenges, but also maybe some of the opportunities for us as a community in the days and weeks ahead.
So I think the challenges at the moment are around communication and how we get the information out quickly that's being delivered daily by the Prime Minister to particularly the very small businesses. How do they actually understand what everything that is being said means, and how do they access the finance? And I know you're discussing that next week, but you know, there's still a lot of confusion about who is actually eligible for what, and actually, you know, businesses need that information and they need to understand it quickly, because certainly if I just take my case as an example, I have already had to make 2 redundancies. Now, maybe that's a little bit premature in the light of the fact that, you know, there might be a scheme coming forward that will mean that I shouldn't have done that, or maybe I didn't need to. But the reality is I can't afford to wait. As a business, I need to know that information now. And also from my individual point, you know, from my employees' point of view, we took the view, and we had this in a consultation discussion with them, that actually, you know, given that they've got mortgages to pay and bills to pay, that actually they would probably be in a better position to claim mortgage relief, etc., if they were able to say that they had been made redundant. Now, that's a view that we took jointly with them. I don't know whether that is true, but that would seem to be the way it might be working. So I think, you know, the challenges are that we need to ensure that businesses are giving, you know, the actual detail of how they can actually work with the support, which is great and fantastic, and there seems to be more coming, which is great. But you know, actually just hearing the PM saying that and then having to wait, possibly understandably, but having to then wait another 3, 5, 10 days or however long, even 24 hours to actually understand it is stressful, because you're having to make decisions on the hoof. So I think that's a challenge, and hopefully something that business support organisations across the country, being led by government, are grappling with, and hopefully I'm sure that will improve. I think that the opportunity is for us to all think perhaps differently about who we are and what our businesses are, to think more about working collaboratively, and we're certainly reaching out at the moment to fellow businesses that maybe in the good old days we might have seen to be perhaps competitive, and our message to everybody is, let's all work together, we're all in the same boat, maybe we can all support each other. There will be elements of what I do that I have to maybe not do as much of, and therefore I might need to partner with someone that can do that, pick that element up, and vice versa. So I think there is an opportunity to reach out, to collaborate better, and to just try and be positive about the fact that although this is a really difficult time, if we can survive, then maybe we'll come out stronger, better, braver, fitter, to actually take our businesses forward. Not the way we would have wanted to have done it, obviously, but trying to look positively that this is going to end, and we will move on. We'll be in a different place, but hopefully we'll be in a stronger, better, fitter place, to be better placed then to grow our businesses again.
Thank you, Catherine, for those I think inspiring and encouraging reflections. It's certainly the spirit that we're picking up across the community at this time. We've had to move quickly to start trialing new technologies, new ways of bringing people together over the past few days, and I'd like to extend a thank you to all of our webcast viewers today for your patience as we navigate this technology for the first time, and also battle communications networks, which I think we all know are under unrelenting pressure at this time, as so many people move to working from home. I should also, as we start to bring today's webcast to a close, extend a thank you to the production team at West London Business for their work over the past few days in bringing today's webcast together, as well as Joel Nichols at Revolution Audio, who's been helping us piece together our virtual studio over the past few days. I should say this is iteration 1. For those of you that tune back in next week, we can promise you an upgrade to the experience as we work through the glitches, and I'm promised a shiny new studio that will bring new gizmos to bear on the viewer experience, which I'm certainly looking forward to, and I hope you will be too. But I suppose what I'd stress in signing off today is the huge importance of staying in touch with family, friends, and colleagues at this time. The value of mutual support and comfort that can be found in regular contact. The West London business team remain just a phone call or an email away if any of our business leader colleagues feel need to reach out. We are in regular contact with local government in West London and also the Bank of England at this time, trying to make sure that insights from the front line, the real world challenges that you're facing are being heard by decision makers. So where you feel that interventions that have been announced in the past few days aren't yet quite enough or could be designed better, please feed back to us where you think those improvements need to be made, and we will then sort of escalate those ideas and concerns. Very much in that vein, I think we're going to bring up a final slide on screen now that provides you with a link that I think we'll also perhaps share over in the YouTube chat window, so that you can just sort of click through to tinyurl.com/WL Thoughts. It's a 4 or 5 question survey that we'd find it extremely helpful if you could complete, just to let us know how we can adapt our services, whether you've got key concerns, as I said, that need to be escalated at this time to local and central government, but also perhaps if you've got thoughts as to how you could help us at West London Business. We are a small team that is working 24/7 at the moment and is very capacity constrained in doing as much as we would like to support the business community at this time. So let us know your thoughts. And we've also put a reminder up there too, which I'm hoping Pim will put into the YouTube chat window, the link to tinyurl.com/WL coronavirus. If that can be typed in to the chat window, Pim, in YouTube, so that people can then as easily as possible click through, first of all, to the WL thought survey, and then through to our current advice on coronavirus page. So that's all for today. A huge thank you once again to our panel this morning. Julie Edmonds from JPC Law, who's battling the technology throughout the morning and the challenging internet links. Catherine Glass, Managing Director of White Label. Ian Hobson from Chargebox. Louise Ray Hill from Jocelyn Hill Communications, and John Rose from HR Department. Thank you all. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you in the weeks ahead, finding new ways of collaborating, as Catherine said. But for now, goodbye, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on Talk at 10.